Seeing as the sci-fi genre in the gaming space keeps coming up short most of the time lately, it's been nice to reminisce about the good old golden days of Mass Effect, KOTOR, and Dead Space as a result of my sneak preview of Osiris Reborn. We all had our hearts and minds broken by the likes of Star Wars Outlaws, Starfield, and Mass Effect Andromeda. You could say some of us more than others.
This isn't fair! How can you tell who's sane and who's insane?
Well, we have a very simple method. Whoever has that stamp on his hand is insane.
And let's be fair, the space genre is pretty niche all in all. For every shooter and open world slop game, there's only a fraction that takes on the deep, dreaded, uncomfortable scale and concept of going up there, into the final frontier. That's why it might be so hard to do, as we've seen in recent years. It's then, after our endless beating of Starfield's dead corpse, I was pleasantly surprised when Owlcat Games reached out to me and offered to take a cheeky little peek at Osiris Reborn ahead of the public early launch, especially after the last videos we published. Great people over there at Owlcat. While I'm quite fond of their Pathfinder games and have been quite interested in playing Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, this one is pretty different if you're hankering for that isometric style CRPG vibe they have such a hard-on for. As do I, and you, I'm imagining, if you're watching this, probably. We're up close and personal now, baby, and like Mass Effect before it, we have some of that tactical gameplay options during gameplay and combat. It's not a secret either, it's been an open and blatant inspiration for the direction of the game and wears it proudly. The tactical time stops, the usher commands and tactical movements, the cover-to-cover based shooting, the companions that take you for a ride, sometimes even in the literal sense. Oh my. If you're not familiar, the titular Expanse, Osiris Reborn, is first and foremost a book series, The Expanse, which I've started reading now after playing this, and also a show now streaming online. In the future, where humans have taken to the stars and where factions, space stations, and spaceships and the like have taken a foothold of many places of it, we are now setting foot here, Osiris Reborn. I've yet to watch the show, but from what I've read from the first book, and mind you, I'm barely halfway, the universe has some rich lore and some interesting characters. And the events that sets off the whole story even gets a mention here in the game as well, so imagine my surprise when my nerdy ass got a little moment of, hey, I know that. I clapped. I stood up and clapped. I stood up and clapped, everyone. So this game is supposed to be set alongside the first season of the show and the first book, it seems, and I like that. That's swell. What I'm trying to say is that the game has the potential to live up to the rich world of The Expanse, but we'll get into that later. I do have to mention that I just finished the first trilogy, by the way, of Red Rising, that book series, so I'm kinda like getting into the space scene at this point, so I might be a little bit biased. I don't know, man, space is pretty cool. So, what's so special about this one? It's just Mass Effect in the Expanse universe. Kind of. But that's not bad. You might find some aspects lacking or great, depending on which way you're swinging. Because The Expanse is grounded, down to earth, and doesn't really feature like active aliens or anything in their setting, or so I've been taught. So it's up to Osiris Reborn to keep it interesting without these things. But hey, you know what? I'm down for that. Remember when Starfield launched? The internet as a collective groaned so hard their eyes rolled back into their skulls when the trailer ended with an introduction to space magic. The Expanse is more grounded. But that's not to say we don't get like fun upgrades and a little bit of mystery and tech and abilities here. It weighs it up with some interesting concepts and characters. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy where this is all going if they deliver on the concept. The systems and if character choices matter in terms of character build and choices during the story, and hell, I even like the little space puzzles they do with space station walking, but there's some stuff we need to talk about later. And I did reach out to get some stuff clarified, explained, and even expanded upon. Owlcat has been nothing but absolute darlings, and it must be said that even though I received the chance to check it out early, played several weeks in advance, by the way, thank you for that, big ups, I'm under no agreement to sugarcoat or hit any marketing points or skew any opinion. I was simply given access, and that was the end of it. But it has to be disclosed, obviously. Also had the opportunity to interview, so to speak, the team, so stick around to the end for that. Your questions soon to be answered. And even though we'll start off with the big greats, there's definitely stuff we need to talk about, because, well, you know, no one's perfect. No one. Other than me, of course, and Sir David Attenborough. Chuck Norris. I don't make the rules. I'm glad you agree. Osiris Reborn aims for the cinematic presentation. It throws dialogue cameras at you nilly-willy, cutaway cameras, and cutscenes aiming for that blockbuster feel. Vibe, tone, and performance capture are at the forefront of what I've managed to play so far. Everything from animations, dialogue, and the visuals scream that they really went for it with this one. I've replayed this thing a few times to get all the details in, and they've managed to build a believable world and atmosphere that feels intriguing and alluring, and even welcoming when it comes to, exploring. Like I said before, I'm only the Expanse novice, but I'm down for more. Everywhere people talk, your companions interact with these people as well, have things to say and even comment on dialogue with other NPCs. You'll be able to have 2 companions with you on your treks, and if they are this interactive as I've seen this far, I'm quite impressed. Not too chatty overall, but they hit when it counts. To deepen yourself into this universe, there are descriptors to items, weapons, and there's also data logs, so to speak, to immerse yourself into this thing. I'm a little bit biased. Because, as I mentioned earlier, I've just finished the first trilogy of the Red Rising books, and I kinda love them. I'm not saying the Expanse books are anything similar, but they do represent the concept of space and its politics, your mysteries, and world as this whole new reality to be explored, and guys, I freaking love that. There's like enough lore to keep you going for years, seeing as the books have like 9 entries and they are thick. There's a show as well, and now Owlcat has this game going for them. And guys, I'm gonna be honest with you, there's even a Telltale game about this IP, and I had no clue. I don't know if that's just sad or bad knowledge on my part. Apparently it was really good. Did any of you play this? Telltale did some bangers back in the day, but did y'all play Tales from the Borderlands? One of my favorite games of all time, actually. The original, not the new one. Christ. All that to say, there's shit to dive into here. If it'll stay interesting, that's the question. I haven't yet seen a lot of the other places for myself that we'll be discovering, but it seems like there's going to be a lot of space stations and compounds, as well as space traversal in your ship, which is definitely a nice addition to this. But I do hope we'll land planetside at some point, just to get that whiff of some bona fide CO2, baby. And to stay interesting, they do need the story, characters, and dialogue to carry this, and, well, if the internet is anything to go by, they simply just need this lady to be at the forefront of every interaction we'll have, and it'll all be hunky-dory. Dangle the keys of possible intercourse right in front of our little eye pussies, and it'll be an absolute slam dunk. What I'm trying to say is there is romance in this game. Also, the story seems to be interesting, as some eldritch horror sets the story in motion. Well, no, it's a bioweapon, but, it reminds me a bit of the first book in the series, a group of people finding something odd and fucked up at the edge of a planet's orbit or station, and then events just snowball into the story we're about to play. I didn't know where to put this, by the way, this is just a little tidbit, but the music is pretty solid in this one. It hits that epic high of a grand adventure, as well as the wandering spaceman feel and vibe. Props to that. I wish I could dedicate a bigger section to it, but just know it's pretty damn nice. So, what do you even do in this game? The story we're going into has already started without us in the early preview, but the trailer does show what fuckery happened prior to setting foot on the Pinkwater 4 station. We fled from there after finding a bioweapon and barely escaped with our lives. And now, we're reporting back to the boss man himself. I got the option to play as either a belter, tech-savvy, or combat-focused woman, or an earther man that is also combat-focused or tech-focused. The main difference between belters and earthers are their anatomy and political views and all that kind of stuff that comes with coming from different places, Racism. As the books at least pushes pretty hard, at least in the beginning sometimes. If there will be any gameplay options or unique interactions for choosing one or the other, I'm eager to find out, but the early previews didn't really focus on that too much. On the way to Bossman, we're already met with some interesting characters, all well voice acted, motion capped, and you can exhaust dialogue trees to get some lore, info, and even some juicy gossip.
Interesting to hear who's buying what, of course, but I want to know some real secrets.
Yeah, right. Real secrets are safe with me. Rings any bells?
Ah, come on.
While trying to report back and while having our stolen ship, the one we barely got away in, rests outside, we get an emergency broadcast about us being boarded by whomever wants to finish us off from the earlier event. Thus, we have to fight, navigate, and survive our way out of this place and off station. It's a good time, and the conclusion is a bone-chilling reminder that the universe of the Expanse is ruthless and pretty grim, behind the quips and occasional funny dialogue. From what I've gathered, by the way, there will be the aforementioned origins as well as a belter. People who are born and kind of live on the outer rims of moons and asteroid belts and stuff. And you'll be able to create your own character and your twin for this as well. That's one of your companions, I suppose. You have a twin. Navigating space stations and structures like that seem to be the majority of the places you'll be seeing, as for now, in the beta, but I did reach out and we'll get over it later. The world of the Expanse does focus heavily on these settings, by the way. Stations, large cities built around asteroids, stuff like that. There are planet-side cities and there are, that kind of stuff as well, but a lot of the story so far that I've uncovered anyways are just out in space, which is great. When you're not going for that AC buff on those covers, D&D fans will get that one, to shoot some fools, you're going to be exploring, harvesting knowledge, quests, and other shit you stumble upon. And the usual. This is where your hacking, persuasion, and other skills will kick into effect, as some areas will be locked off to you due to lack of expertise, and where if you don't have the required skills, you won't get served the additional and saucy extra dialogue options. Other than that, and what little I managed to see, hubs like this might be the key areas to gather some quests and stuff like that. And give your boy some slack, this game isn't releasing until next year, so there's a significant limit on how much I can extract from this bad boy, and how much the devs are willing to throw your boys away at this time. In these areas, when you're not out in the field, or when you're out in the field too, I suppose, is when you'll be able to get some loot, materials, and upgrades. And so far, they seem alright. It's a lot of stat boosts and upgrades, but in a universe like the Expanse, I see how you're gonna be limited like that. And it does keep it interesting with some cool technology and some cool weapons and stuff like that. And a lot of it is just numbers go up. But I was having a great time rummaging around for diaries, history bits, and gossip. I don't know what it is about me, or this game, but I instantly wanted to know about the gossip, the tea, the slander. I suppose it goes to show that, before even dabbling into the books, the game got me interested enough to want to explore. And y'all know I'm a cynical motherfucker, so that definitely goes a long way. So when you're not rolling non-combat checks on doors, locks, and easily fooled suckers, you go blasting. Hard. With weapons. Rubber, metal, as long as it gets the job done, we're good. Advancing from cover to cover when gaining some ground feels tough. Sometimes a bit clunky. You can vault over or run around to get your next point of vantage, and it feels good when you kinda get it down. Gunning down your enemies with whatever weapon you want feels satisfying. But my god, if you want to go hard with an SMG, you better be whispering that bitch into his ear before firing, because the stats on these guns need to be paid attention to. Range, damage output, and fire rate have felt important to me so far, depending on the battlefield. And it felt meaningful to change my weapons in certain situations, which is fresh. What really made me get onto my toes though, was that whenever I wanted to obliterate some poor fool with a grenade, the aim trajectory wouldn't let me throw anywhere other than my own feet. So, thanks. Combat boils down to you and two other companions getting down and dirty. In this slice of the game, I was only given access to, well, me and my twin, but each companion you'll get has their own special traits and stats, and they will accompany you along the adventure. I don't know if you can go solo, that would be nice, like a lone wolf, but I don't think so. I think you kind of have to have two with you. I didn't ask. I should have. You can maneuver them around, focus their abilities on whatever poor bastard you want killed. It's heavily cover-based, and it gives you time to think, strategize, and command your force to do whatever bidding you want in the heat of the moment. It does feel a bit clunky as of right now when it comes to snapping into place sometimes when you do the covers, but that might just be me getting used to the controls as of recording this. I did 3 playthroughs of this, and it felt a bit better each time I did it. It's hard to comment more about it other than it being a Mass Effect / Gears of War mashup, which isn't a bad thing in my opinion. It also helps that fighting arenas feel tense. They're not very challenging. I wish they kind of amped up the difficulty, but there is a hard setting in the early access that I didn't try out, so I might go back and try that later. And when you're out on side of a station or whatever, it feels like shit's going down. You feel like every step you take towards the enemy matters. I don't know. It just felt tight, and it felt right. So the change of pace and scenery really adds to the feeling of progression, attention, and scale. Like going from inside and then suddenly you're outside fighting in 0G. If they keep it interesting with some neat enemy AI and tactics in tow with player upgrades and equipment, I think it'll be a good time. While playing, you'll upgrade your character and companions. So you got armor stats, weapon stats, and even character stats. These all have their uses, and while combat-related stats are pretty self-explanatory, you also got some systems that will play part in the world itself and even in dialogue. If you're a charismatic bastard, you get the option to sweet-talk your way into some information, lore, and down the line, maybe some more valuable stuff. I hope so anyways. Being tech-savvy, for example, will allow you to unlock and hack certain systems, doors, and the like. You get the gist. Basically, skill check for this stuff. It does add some fun variations to playstyles, and it'll hopefully be fun to weigh the options when choosing what to upgrade down the line. Other than that, you can barter with folk, you can pick up quests from speaking to people, and also you can upgrade your weapons and stuff at upgrading benches, which is fun. You can add some different stats to it, you can upgrade the magazine sizes, the critical chit, you know this stuff. Not too much have been revealed about the companions, but we've got a list over who we can expect to bring on this journey. And you also get a ship. And it will act as like a hub for these people to lounge around in, and where you can be able to pick them up or talk to them before dragging them by the collar out with you into what can only be classified as mortal danger. There's been some talk about how you can romance these people, and so I imagine having an affinity system will be in place for 1.0. Doesn't have to be visible to the player, obviously. We've already kind of went over what we can expect on the combat side of the companions, but I can also add that their skills do complement yours in the world. So let's say you're trying to unlock a door, but you're too stupid to get into it, they'll have your back. And I do hope they really make you miss a lot by not having a certain companion with you. Like, give me a reason to bring a character I might not usually bring with me because I hate them, or whatever. The Expanse universe focuses a lot on star stations, like I said, and space itself, so most of our time in Osiris Reborn will be aboard ships and space stations, and perhaps the occasional planet side or asteroid side shenanigans, but don't quote me on that. So I do hope they'll keep these areas, hubs and stations and ships, interesting so they don't feel samey, I guess. If Starfield taught us anything, it's that seeing the same shit over and over might drive a person to lunacy. They do seem on track to do just that with the systems in place, the puzzles and interesting NPCs, so I'm crossing my fingers. But if you're expecting an open world map, there won't really be anything like that here. Which to many, myself included, will be a sweet relief. So, I did reach out to Alcat to clarify and expand on some stuff I was curious about or worried about even, so let's get into it. I'll just read out my questions and then what I got as a response. To what extent will skill checks be apparent in the world outside of combat, in hubs and the open world, so to speak? Will there be any reason to roll another character to go back and check some other stuff you've missed? Or will things be surface level, mostly? Will any story moments be impacted by this? A lot of RPG fanatics do love these things, so I thought I'd ask. Skill checks work somewhat similarly to D&D in spirit, they said, but without visible dice rolls. Instead, it's a fixed value compared against the check. Investing in social and other skills will allow you to pass checks during exploration, which can unlock additional dialogue options and alternate approaches to situations. Which is nice. That's kind of what I love. They didn't really answer it, but if you're if some of the choices that you do for your upgrades can affect the story in any way, like majorly, that would be nice, but I assume those things would be chunked up to whatever you do in the moment, not based on skill checks, which I get, you know. Just I'm a D&D nerd. And I want everything to matter, but it's a game. We have to check our expectations here. It seems like you're aiming for hub-like environments and areas where players can explore, gather quests, mingle, and dabble within. But how will the game tackle these types of areas later in the game beyond the beta area? Will there be any regions on planets for players to explore, or will they mostly be navigating ships, stations, and more narrow and focused areas for these kinds of endeavors? The game is not open world. In the Expanse universe, humans primarily live on ships, space stations, asteroids, or in controlled environments on planets where survival without proper protection is impossible. Because of that, a traditional open world structure wouldn't be a good fit for this setting. But then again, they say we can explore a lot of locations, including some relatively spacious areas, so I'm looking forward to that. So we're going to a lot of places like Genemide, I don't know how you pronounce that actually, Ceres, space stations, Era Station, other territories controlled by the UN and MCR as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of variations to this game when it comes to locations, which is good. I also did ask if, how we're going to be traversing between places, how will the ship play into the game as a whole, will it be a hub for companions to gather around, talk on there, basically. And then I just asked, to what extent will we utilize the ship as an area of interaction between characters, traversal, what's happening on the ship. And they say, well, we'll have a ship, and as we can see in the trailer, Gemini, and it's more than a means of transport. Over time, it becomes your home and a central space in the game. The ship plays a key role as a hub where you'll interact with your companions and get to know them better. In terms of customizing, the Gemini will evolve depending on your choices and progression. However, it's not a housing system in the traditional sense. And I did have to ask them, do you have any estimate on how long the title will run for, story-wise? And they do say that around 20 to 40 hours depending on your playstyle. I did ask them about choice and consequence in this game, how deep will it go, how deep will it be? And they did answer that there will be choices and consequences. Some will have an immediate impact on the game world, while others will play out over time. I think it's fair to maybe draw the conclusion, or draw the similarities between Mass Effect, The Witcher even, which will... or Cyberpunk, which we'll get back to. Hold on. I did also ask them that since Mass Effect is such a grand inspiration for them, what does this game do to stand out from the other games? They do look for, or they do aim for a blockbuster version of Mass Effect. And the companions seem fun, the premise seems mysterious and interesting, and what are you doing that the other games in this genre haven't done before? And I'm gonna just read the whole reply. The Expanse, Osiris Reborn, is set in the world of the Expanse. It's less of a traditional space opera and feels closer to a believable near future where humanity has begun colonizing space, but still faces many of the same challenges we do today. Space itself plays a major role in this world, which we've already gone over. It's hostile, empty, and inherently dangerous. That makes your ship and your crew especially important. Survival depends on them. The crew is actively involved in your journey. When you go on missions with part of your team, the remaining crew members don't just stay behind. They continue to support you in various ways and remain part of the experience. And of course, zero gravity combat is another defining element that sets the game apart. Which I suppose it's true. These areas that you go into, the firefights, they do tickle my brain in a way that I think this will be this generation's, if they can pull it off, this generation's Mass Effect. My God, I'm putting a lot of faith in this already. They did not want to comment on the pricing, but I did ask. It's too far from launch. So I did also ask for you guys who haven't read the books or you haven't watched the show, onboarding. The people who have not read the books, watch the show, be at home, staying, or starting their journey with Osiris Reborn. If so, why? And they just say, you can play the Expanse, Osiris Reborn, without prior knowledge to the Expanse. But if you do, if you've read the books or watched the show, you will be excited to visit some familiar places and see some familiar faces. As the shift for this project, wow, this is a great one. They knocked my socks off with this. Has this shift, and I did ask them, you've been working on a certain type of games for so long, and has there been any woes, so to speak, when it comes to development? Has there been any challenges shifting from Unity production to like a different engine and stuff like that? And it seems like they've gathered team members from Cyberpunk, from Mass Effect, and The Witcher. So we have pretty knowledgeable people working on this, and there's also the Alcat veterans. They're eager to do another type of game, another type of storytelling, game design, and that's good. That's good. I didn't know they actually pulled some devs from these studios, but hey man, that's the ace up their sleeve maybe. Not to say they're not great on their own, because Alcat has an immense track record that I absolutely love, but their combined efforts, golly OG. So at the end of all this, there are a few things that I really want to see in 1.0. UI scaling for ultra wide. You know, I was originally recording this in ultra wide because I have an ultra wide, and I was trying to get that UI down to like 16:9. Couldn't do it. I swear there was an option for that, but I must have dreamt it. But there's not. There's also the problem with the camera. It's very narrow. It's sitting very tightly to your back, which I am a fan of. I just wish they maybe pull the camera a little bit further towards your shoulder, open up the field of view a little, maybe give us a field of view slider. The closer you are to the character, the more connected you are to the character, obviously. So just a little bit of a tweak there, because it did feel very claustrophobic. There's the age-old problem with the skill tree being just basically number increases, which is unfortunate. But they do remedy this by cool gadgets and upgrades and the like, so I feel like they weigh up. We haven't seen this, and it's not like it's not missing, it's just not here in the beta, so to speak, or the early access. I would really love to see the character creation. Since we are going to be playing this guy or gal for a long time, and I do hope they have an extensive character creation. You are going to be voiced, so hopefully they have a few voices as well. Maybe like what they did in Dragon Age Inquisition and stuff like that. That would be a nice. That would be nice. There's also a few things that I really liked. It kind of goes hand in hand with the systems that we mentioned earlier. Perception, your perception stat, kind of opens up these random. You can walk around the open world, the hubs, the areas, and suddenly your character is like, wait, there's something going on here. And you can kind of like look for something hidden, and you can find hidden stuff by just having a higher perception, which ties into the D&D stuff, which I'm very fond of. So I thought that was neat. I hope there's going to be a little bit more stuff like that, to really make you feel like you've kind of focused on one path of your character, so that you feel like you're good in that one thing you're specializing in. Also like that in combat, cover can just be obliterated. One second you'll be standing behind a cover, and then somebody knocks a grenade towards your face, and then your cover's gone, and you're gonna have to scramble. You're gonna have to scramble, get the heck out of there. So there's a few things that I really like. The performance was a little bit dodgy while recording this. Even though I got the privilege of running an i9 and a 5080, the performance is something to be desired, but this is a very early look, and I'll be honest with you, sports fans, it feels better than I thought it would be. And seeing as launch is a year away, we can slide it. We can let it slide. I'm excited. Hopefully we'll get a pretty solid space adventure with Owlcat's space shooter coming the next year. I'll be here to play it and review it come full release. I've talked for way too long. Later.